I'm Tommy, and welcome to another musical adventure. And today is a 10 album list of albums that are surprisingly not in my record collection. Now, this thread was started by James Griffiths, the vinyl professor. If you haven't seen his channel, please go check it out. And it was a really interesting list, and so I immediately, some titles just started coming to mind. Now, these are albums, and I'll kind of, as I go through the list, I'll explain, but I'm not talking about like ultra rare albums that are probably hard to find, and albums that I'd love to have. These are albums that if you went through my record collection, or my vinyl collection more specifically, you probably would be surprised to say, wow, he doesn't own this? That's kind of shocking. And so these are albums that I feel like are probably easy to find, or albums that I could get my hands on, but for various reasons I don't have them. I believe that's the spirit of the thread, and so that's kind of what I went with when I put this list together. And these are 10 albums. The first one is Velvet Underground and Nico. Now, I do have a digital version of this album, so it's not like I couldn't listen to it if I wanted to, but I don't have it on vinyl. And that's one of those records that just seems to be kind of a very... it just pops up. A lot of you guys share it. It's an important album. It's an album that I've certainly heard, just never bought it on vinyl in any version. The second one, which is a bit of a shocker probably for most of you, is Van Morrison's Astral Weeks. I do not own this on vinyl. I do have a CD copy of it, but this is one that I just never bought on vinyl. Now, from what I understand, the recent Rhino reissue of this is a Chris Bellman cut, so it's probably a great sounding version of the album. I do like the album quite a bit, just don't have it on vinyl. Astral Weeks by Van Morrison. The third one is a little bit of a surprise, probably for most of you, considering if you've been watching my channel and you know a little bit about me. But it's King Crimson's In the Court of the Crimson King. That's an album that just shows up on the VC all the time. It's a well-loved album, and I have to say that King Crimson is probably a bit of a musical sort of dark blind spot for me. It's a band that I know some of their stuff. I had some of their later albums like Thrack Attack. I had that on CD at one point or another. But this is one of those albums that just constantly pops up as one of the great albums, as an album that any vinyl or music collector should own. I don't have it. And it's a band that I really am not as aware of, but they seem like they'd be in my wheelhouse as a Frank Zappa fan, as a fan of some progressive bands like Yes and Genesis. King Crimson seems like a band that would be right there with them. Unfortunately, I just don't have that album, and I don't really know that album. The fourth one is an album that I kind of have some mixed feelings about. It's Nirvana's Nevermind. Now, let me go back a little bit on that. Nirvana is one of those bands that, for me, I don't rank them as highly or hold them in a certain esteem like a lot of you may do. Now, I remember seeing that album on cassette tape for the first time. I was in high school. I think I was in 11th grade, and these two guys that were kind of musically kind of hip, listening to some stuff way outside the mainstream, they were exchanging this cassette. One had bought it and was letting the other one borrow it, and I remember seeing that cover with the swimming baby on it, and I remember thinking, wow, that's kind of cool. What is it? And they were like, it's Nirvana, and it was like really a secret thing. And then like a month later, the thing just blew up, and it really sent bands like Poison and Skid Row to the unemployment line, seemingly overnight. It was just it was a musical watershed moment, and at that point in my life, musically, I was into some very different things. And so Nirvana was just one of those bands that kind of existed, but they didn't really hit me on the radar. And, I bought albums like In Utero. I remember getting that, and some of the later Nirvana albums. But Kurt Cobain's death didn't have a profound effect on me like it did a lot of others in my generation. It was just a band that never really just went straight to the heart, and I missed the Nirvana thing. But I do recognize it as an important album. I like the album. I believe I have a CD copy. I know I have a digital copy somewhere. So it's an album that I do appreciate and enjoy, just don't have it on vinyl. And the next album almost sort of kind of falls into that same sort of pattern. It's Guns N' Roses' Appetite for Destruction. Now, I was into that album. I was in junior high school when that album came out. Guns N' Roses, that album was sort of a big moment for rock music in the 80s. It was at the height of that whole hair metal thing and that sort of processed sort of look. But Guns N' Roses kind of came out. It was kind of more raw, a little more in your face, and their music, even though it kind of, I believe I first heard Guns N' Roses' name. They were opening for Motley Crue on a tour, and then Welcome to the Jungle and Sweet Child of Mine. All those became massive hits, and they were like the band that could have saved rock and roll. There was just this moment where it was like everyone was kind of looking at Guns N' Roses for the next big thing. I think they got a little overblown by the time they got to the Use Your Illusions, like a band that started to believe its own hype. And I know that those albums have their fans, and so I'm not going to detract from that. But I think Appetite for Destruction is one of the great sort of rock albums of the 80s, and I don't have it on vinyl. The next one is a record that I can almost apply to this whole band to not have any vinyl records. Around that same period of Guns N' Roses, but in a different sort of genre, the Beastie Boys. Now, the album that I picked for this list is Paul's Boutique. And mainly because Paul's Boutique just seems like an album that record collectors should own. It's probably a good record to have on vinyl. But I don't have Ill Communication. I don't have any Beastie Boys on vinyl. But Ill Communication was sort of another sort of big moment in 80s and particularly to rap music. And then Paul's Boutique came out around 1991. I believe 91 was the year it came out. And it was like the shift had started to take place. And that was an album that I remember went pretty largely ignored by the mainstream when it came out. It wasn't until a few years later that the Beastie Boys kind of found their way back into the commercial graces as well as the critical graces. But Paul's Boutique is just one of those great records, all the samples, and it was sort of a unique moment. And I would love to have that on vinyl. And it's one that I probably should own on vinyl, but I don't. The next one is The Wall by Pink Floyd. I have this thing with Pink Floyd. The Wall is an album. I don't think it's the greatest album they ever made, but I do enjoy it when I hear it. So it's probably an album I should own. My favorite Pink Floyd album, funny enough, is Metal, which a lot of people kind of would be like, really? I like Dark Side of the Moon. I like Wish You Were Here. A friend of mine recently sent me a copy of Animals because he was like, you need to have Animals. And I agree. I think Animals is great. And sort of The Wall falls into that sort of run of albums, especially between Dark Side and The Wall. It's sort of this great sort of Pink Floyd era. It's just an album that I never had. With Pink Floyd, I'm probably going to get most of the reissues because I like them. They sound good and they're fine enough. So instead of seeking out used copies and trying to find particular pressings, it's easier for me just to say, you know what, spend the money and get the new one. But The Wall by Pink Floyd. The next one, and I'm gonna cheat on this one. Number 8 here is somebody that I don't have any of their albums. I don't even have them on CD. I don't have them on vinyl. The Doors. And and I'm going to explain this a little bit. For The Doors, for me, now if I got to pick one album, like if you said right now you could have any one Doors album, I would probably pick L.A. Woman because I do like that album a lot. I love the song Love Her Madly, the title track. I think just as an album, I like L.A. Woman a lot. The Doors, here's the thing with The Doors for me. They're a band that if I had these on vinyl, I would spin them, I would listen to them, and I probably would enjoy them. So I'm not knocking The Doors or Doors fans in any way. So if you're a Doors fan, don't feel like I'm putting it down. In high school, The Doors kind of became, and Led Zeppelin kind of falls under this a little bit to some extent, but where the fans almost make it kind of hard to like the band. Now, that's kind of kooky because they should be kind of separate. The music is its own thing, and regardless of who likes the music. But there's this whole Jim Morrison, Lizard King, Mr. Mojo Rising poet kind of thing that has kind of the mystique that has surrounded this band for so long that I don't buy into it. It's just something that it's never really hit a mark with me. But musically speaking, and when I hear these songs like Love Her Madly or Touch Me from the Soft Parade, when I hear the music, Light My Fire, all these hits that were huge and still get played quite regularly, I don't run away screaming like, oh, I hate this. This is the worst thing I've ever heard. I enjoy it quite a bit. It's not bad. And if I had these records, I would probably listen to them. But it's a band that I don't seek them out. Like when I go into record stores and I'm looking through and I see a Doors record, I don't check the pressing. I don't look at what it is. I don't just, it's just like, it's a band that completely sort of goes around me in every way. I don't have any, just this desire, I'm going to go out and find Doors records or seek them out like some other bands that I do that I'm always checking for. And so, but as a fan of music, as a fan of rock music or classic rock music, it's a little bit surprising that I don't own any of these albums on vinyl. Now, I will say that several years ago, I bought a CD box set of the Doors' complete studio albums, and that's why I know these records to an extent. I did own them at one point. I played them, and that's probably when I discovered that I really liked L.A. Woman, and am singling that album out. My sister loves the Doors. She loves the Jim Morrison thing, and so I ended up giving her the box set, which is kind of interesting because I usually am not one to just say, here's this expensive box set I bought and I'm never going to listen to it, so here you go. I'm not saying I regret it, because I don't. I think she's probably enjoyed it way more than I ever would have. But it's a band that's just like totally black hole from my music collection. No Doors music. The next one is one that I just, again, I probably should have. Music from Big Pink by the band. I love the self-titled Brown album with that brown cover, and I have some later band albums. The band is a group that I enjoy their music, and I have Big Pink on CD, and so I recognize that probably compared to that self-titled album, not as good, but still a solid album. And if you're flipping through my records, you would go, wow, you don't have Big Pink in here? I don't have it. And finally, the last one for this list is Let It Be by The Replacements. I only have one Replacements LP in my vinyl collection. It's Pleased to Meet Me. And I like that record quite a bit. Let It Be is an album that I've heard, that I like. I just don't have it. The Replacements are an odd band for me because they're sort of one of those bands that I don't listen to enough and probably don't have a great appreciation for them, as some of you probably do. The Replacements, to me, especially the early stuff, it sounds sloppy and almost amateurish, and it feels like they could have been a better band. And I get that's part of the charm of the Replacements, that's why some people like them so much. But having said that, it's sort of one of those bands that, like I said, Pleased to Meet Me, which to me is a kind of a polished record, and it feels kind of complete. That's sort of the stuff that I gravitate towards, but the other stuff kind of turns me away. So there's this dichotomy with the Replacements for me that keeps me from sort of going over the edge and becoming a full-blown Replacements fan. So those are my 10. As an honorable mention, and I'll just bring this up, an album that I was sort of toying with putting on this list, Autobahn by Kraftwerk. So just to add on there, to add that one, I want to throw it out there because I did write it down on my list, but keeping it to 10, so I'll say it's an honorable mention. I don't have any Kraftwerk on vinyl. There's probably a lot of other stuff I don't have, and as I grow in my music and learn about different things, which I still hope that I'm doing, there's probably going to be bands that I'm going to go, oh man, like why wasn't I listening to them? I kind of had that with Tom Waits, like it was a light bulb. Like for years and years and years, I put off Tom Waits. And then when I finally really got Tom Waits, I was like, oh, all this great music I've been missing out on all these years. I just have those moments. But these are albums that just came to mind when you talk about holes in my record collection, stuff that's out there, stuff that I could probably go on Amazon right now and spend $200 and get every single one of these albums. I just don't have them for one reason or another. So what do you think? If you have some you want to list, comment, or better yet, make a video and add to the thread. Thank you to James for bringing this one up and putting it out there for the VC. I hope some of you make videos on that, on this subject. I'd love to hear your holes in your record collections or albums that you're missing. Either way, comment, let me know what you think. I love interacting with you guys, you know that. Like the video, give the little thumbs up, and be sure you're subscribed. Love to have all the subscribers I can get, so it doesn't hurt you or cost you anything to do it, so go ahead and subscribe to the channel, and I appreciate it. Get notified when there's new content. Hey, I'll see you guys next time for the next video. I've got some more adventures coming up. We're going to continue my Blues Trail adventure. I've got a special music store video coming up, so those are all in the sort of works and in the development. So I hope you stick around for that. In the meantime, save the Texas Prairie Chicken.